joining us on Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. Lake Champlain is a natural resource providing water, habitat, and recreation. Vermont's Great Lake is also a resource for education. Students from kindergarten to PhD students study the lake, and we're going to look at one of those programs today, Lake Champlain's Sea Grant and UVM Extension's Watershed Alliance Teacher Research Partnership, or WATR for short. To talk about this course, I'm joined by Ashley Eaton, Watershed and Lake Education Coordinator for Lake Champlain Sea Grant, and Nathaniel Moore. He teaches science at South Burlington High School. Thank you to both of us for talking with me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We're happy to have you. And Ashley, let's start with you. Remind viewers what the Lake Champlain Sea Grant does.
Yeah, so Lake Champlain Sea Grant is really focused on protecting both the environment and the economies of the Lake Champlain Basin, and so we work with businesses, local, state officials on protecting Lake Champlain, as well as with community members like Nate, a classroom teacher, to kind of extend research into the classroom.
All right, now let's talk about this program, WATR. What does that do?
Yeah, so WATR is kind of a really unique program. It's a vessel-based education program. You may have heard of a program like NOAA Teacher at Sea, which is focused on getting teachers out on research vessels that are conducting active science missions. And with the incoming vessel, we knew that would be a really great opportunity to get teachers out on Lake Champlain and kind of model a project like NOAA Teacher at Sea.
Sure, and by vessel you mean, is that the Marcel Melisira?
Yes, so the University of Vermont research vessel, the Marcel Melisira, which is a 65-foot catamaran vessel. It's going into its second field season this year, so it's still new to us. And it's really wonderful because it's a hybrid electric catamaran, so it usually is functioning pretty quietly compared to some of the diesel boats many folks have been on.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Nate, you participated in 2024. So how did you first learn about it?
So I've been bringing students with Sea Grant programming for the last 5 to 10 years, just for them to get exposed to what research opportunities are happening at the Rubenstein Lab. So I was already on the mailing list, and I believe I got an email announcing the new program, and it sounded like just the perfect fit for my kind of professional development goals.
Sure. And what motivated you to do it? Even you've been doing it for a while from the sounds of it.
Yeah, so the difference between this and the typical programming that I was doing is this was targeted towards educators. So we were working with the researchers, the scientists directly. Rather than having my students as the focus of the learning, I was able to sit in that seat and just really wanted to learn about what current research was happening on the lake, the methods that are used, all that real world science that's happening.
Absolutely. And Ashley, how many teachers do you let into this program?
Yeah, that's a great question. Usually around 15 in the cohort, just because we'll be working on the deck with the researchers and we just want to have enough space for safety and all the things. So 15 is kind of our max.
Sure. And is there any cost to participate?
Yeah, there is a small program fee. It's usually like $300. Basically, it covers research vessel time, being out on the lake. So one thing that's unique about this program that Nate kind of mentioned is the teachers spend the whole week out on the vessel. Nate's talking about bringing his students aboard for 2 hours, but Nate actually gets to join us and work every day on the vessel, each day kind of featuring a different research project. And so that's kind of the program fee, but then also teachers can take it for graduate credit as well if that's of interest.
Absolutely, that's incredible. And do you have to be a science teacher to take it?
You don't have to be a science teacher, you do have to be a teacher though. So I think a lot of the concepts are transferable. It's very interdisciplinary. I think it attracts science teachers for sure, but I think it applies across subject areas. And you just need to be a teacher in Vermont or New York, or even a pre-service teacher or informal educator.
Sure. And Nate, what was a typical day like?
So we would often be briefed by Ashley, who put together amazing logistics, because we were often starting in one location, ending the day in a totally different location. Just hearing about what researchers we would be working with for the day, what the destination was, and then we'd quickly hear from a scientist. So whoever the person was for that day, they would brief us on what the context was for their research, the background, kind of where their questions were coming from. We were able to ask probing questions that ranged from ecological concepts up through like how the technical data analysis works, or the equipment that we were going to be using for the day. So we would hear from the researchers. Sometimes that was happening in a lab on land. Other times it was in the wonderful lab space on this new vessel, where we were in transit to the location for the day. And then when we were briefed, we were then pretty much turned into research assistants. So working alongside those scientists and taking instructions from the captain or the deckhands, to actively help deploy equipment or collect samples. We had lots of time to chat with fellow educators, so it was a wonderful mix of middle and high school teachers. So exchanging ideas throughout the day. And then Ashley did an awesome job keeping the cooler topped up and snacks and food, so there were wonderful meals, and we'd eventually make our way to some destination, whether it was over in New York for the night or back in our home port.
Wow, it sounds like a great way to spend a week.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And you said that you were working essentially as helping out the scientists there, so you were doing real data collection, is that right?
Yeah, it was a mix of both. So one of the researchers that comes to mind, Eddie, was doing some plankton work, and I don't think we used he wasn't actively collecting data on that day, but he was showing us all the methods that he used to collect his samples. But then there was another day where Bianca was showing us, told us about her research related to lake mounts and biodiversity, and she was deploying these enormous apparatus to collect all of the data that she was looking to collect for her actual project. And that in that case, the captain had specific GPS coordinates. We had to go to that place. There was pauses and moments and reshifting and shuffling. So it definitely wasn't a scripted thing. It was kind of in the moment. Yeah, real science.
Yeah, great to see in action.
Yeah.
And how have you been able to bring it back to the classroom with you?
So both macro level and micro. So there were concepts that I learned that it was so awesome being surrounded by so many knowledgeable scientists. You could ask any question, and if not getting an instant answer, you'd have a whole bunch of emails waiting when you got home. And there were conceptual content that I learned about complex food web dynamics that I hadn't known of prior. But then there were also micro things like how do you actually collect plankton from 60 feet down without contaminating your sample? So these Van Dorn tubes, which then I could bring back to my classroom, and theoretically I could have students do an engineering design challenge to build your own Van Dorn tube, or students could use those equipment to collect their own data.
And how does it give your students a better understanding even of what's available at UVM?
So the connections with the researchers were invaluable. So I'm actually often linking up my students directly to researchers, and seagrant has been wonderful in letting us borrow some equipment. In the past, we've had students go conduct some work down at the lab, at the Rubenstein lab.
Yeah, lots of opportunities to strengthen that bond.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Ashley, what are some of the topics that we heard a little bit about some of the experiments they were doing, but what are some of the topics that you guys will cover in this?
Yeah, that's great. And so in terms of the cohort 2024 that Nate participated in, we had kind of like a range of topics from both being on the water in both Lake Champlain, but also streams, and then also kind of in the near shore zone, and so trying to get teachers engaged in some wildlife. So we did plankton sampling, we did lake mounts, we worked on some fisheries work looking at kind of the food web and juvenile lake trout. We took teachers on shore and we looked at kind of like wildlife that are reliant upon this near water source, and so we did some kind of tracking techniques and ways that you can observe with students. It was really like kind of a broad range. We try to pick a range of researchers that some teacher will be interested in, so as part of the course they kind of get to work on a teacher researcher team, and so throughout that, they're really diving into one topic. They get to explore all of them throughout their fieldwork, but there will be one that they kind of focus on, and that'll be what they take back to the classroom.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Nate, you brought along a poster that one of your students made, and we'll pop it up on the screen in a second, but how does it kind of relate to your teaching in this water course?
So in addition to teaching general biology, I run a research class at South Burlington High School, so students pursue independent research projects. And in this case, Kyle Nee is a sophomore, and my interest was piqued by this idea of whether zebra mussels are exacerbating the problem of algae blooms, or if they're actually kind of working on our side. Are they helping us to purify water? And so that student, I brought that question to the student, and he ran an experiment where we collected zebra mussels and then kept them in the lab, and he fed them different foods. So cyanobacteria versus just green algae diet, and looked at those selective foraging behaviors of zebra mussels. And then he actually brought that research to the state science fair, won a bunch of awards,
Wow.
and just put together a wonderful project, a project that has so much real life value to our whole watershed. And it wouldn't have been as robust of a project if I didn't have the connections with the researchers that I made, from this summer.
Yeah, that's incredible. Ashley, is that kind of the dream outcome for something like this?
That is for sure the dream outcome, yeah. I mean, to see, so Nathaniel took the course with us in the summer, worked on developing some of the kind of classroom content, and then also because of Nate's role working with the science fair, kind of throughout the summer was thinking about these awesome opportunities to kind of model some of these projects at a smaller scale with their students, and to spend the summer building skills and knowledge, and then to basically bring it full circle to the students are conducting their own research on local relevant water quality challenges is 100% the exemplar in the goal for the program. And so we're super excited about the students project, and we were happy to work alongside Nathaniel during the whole the whole process, and we'll be excited to kind of keep that relationship going.
Yeah, that's incredible. And if you're someone at home in the public and you're like, man, I want to get on that boat, there is an opportunity this summer. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we will be hosting a kind of a limited series public research vessel trip. So if you're interested in getting out on the lake, learning a little bit about both the vessel, but also the health of Lake Champlain and what you can do to be a steward for the lake, this is a great opportunity. There will be information rolling out on the Lake Champlain Sea Grant website probably in May about the trip series, and there will be kind of 2 locations. So you can take a trip from Burlington, Vermont, our home port, for the university vessel, or also we'll be doing some trips out of Plattsburgh, the Plattsburgh Marina over there too. So depending on where you are in the lake, hopefully we'll be able to accommodate you on one of those trips.
Yeah, that's great. And Nate, for any teachers out there thinking about participating, what's your advice for them?
I would say if you're interested in any aspects of the watershed, particularly research-related aspects, then be curious. Check out the program and then show up with a whole bunch of questions, because you're going to get a whole lot of answers, as well as a view into all of the questions that we still don't have answers to. So.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's our program for today. My thanks to the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX. I'm Jolie Whitney. This is Across the Fence. Have a good one.